I was talking this whole time and you couldn't hear me. I was talking this entire time and you couldn't hear me. I was writing an email earlier. So did you not even hear the intro? It's been a day. Okay, I'll save the intro for the next stream. It was a fun intro. Sage. Sag. Okay, so I'm probably going to end the stream a little bit early today because there is so much going on. And what all did I mention? I said like 80 things, 80 different topics already. I'll try to restate them. I'm going to end at, let's do 11. All right, I'm going to say that we're going to end at 11:30 today, though. Today, you actually have to put today's date. So it gives us a counter. Because, like, a lot of stuff just came up. I had back-to-back meetings this morning starting at 8:30. Starting at 9 o'clock. And so I went from, now I'm saying it in the completely wrong order. So this kind of thing happens a lot. I found out on Wednesday, at my 3 o'clock meeting with the client. So we have a weekly meeting with the client at 3 o'clock for an hour. And I don't know why it's on a Wednesday at 3 p.m., especially when during the meeting they would say stuff like, well, by the end of the day today, you better blah, blah, blah. And it's like, the end of the day is the end of this meeting. The end of the day is actually halfway through the end of this meeting, but whatever. So anyway, I found out on Wednesday that our localization, so any text that we have in our app needs to be sent to a different team for them to localize. And if we don't put the strings that we need localized in the package that we send to them, it doesn't get localized and we can't add any new text to the app until the next release, essentially. So that needed to be in by today. And I found that out on Wednesday. And so there was this entire thing that I was trying to do when I had an hour or two of in between work time, where I put together a tool for seeing here are all of our localization strings that we use in our application. And here are the ones where the translated text matches the English text. And there are some obvious cases where the translated text is not supposed to match the English text. So for example, in just about every Arabic or Hebrew translation, there should be at least one or two Arabic or Hebrew characters, not in every single one, but in just about every case. So there was a discussion that we had that prompted me to do this, where there's a word classic that was translated in every single language except Hebrew for some reason by the translation team. So I started putting this tool together so that we have an easy way to just push a button and say, here are all of the translations, here are all the ones where it matches the English, here are all the ones where we don't have 35 languages for the translations, because it's supposed to be translated in 35 languages, which means we should have 35 total entries when we look through all of our regex files. But I was essentially told to drop that. We're not focused on that. And then here on Wednesday, and this was November, I think, when I was doing that. So then on Wednesday, they're like, well, we need to take care of this issue that was submitted because it was submitted as a translation issue by a customer, and we need to get this word translated correctly in all languages. And then there was another word that came up for one of the tests, and it's like, okay, we have multiple instances. Do you see a pattern? Maybe we should run a tool that says, let's go find all of the words that don't seem to be translated in every language, determine which of those things are obviously not translated when they should be, and then resubmit them for translation. And so I was essentially put back on that. And I'm like, we could have done this at an easier pace earlier, but now it's a rushed pace. So I had to adapt the tool for some extra things that I didn't account for. Like we have a separate file that gets generated. It's like, you never told me about this file before. You told me about this other one, but not this one. And so I was working on that. But anyway, while I was working on that, I got an email from the people from my previous job. And they're like, we're trying to update some website data and we're having trouble doing it. And it's like, okay, Christy already sent you guys a response back in, I think that one was also November, for here's where you can find the information for updating the documents, updating the media files. It's on your shared drive and it's located here. And I sent the information about here's how you access the Azure DevOps repo in case you need a developer to update the content. Yeah, nobody reads the documentation. But the thing is that at that time, it was July and then later, sorry. But at that time, he responded with, yeah, we were able to update the documents. But this time they actually need to update content on the page, which means modifying the code, redeploying, and getting a new version of the app on AWS. And so I don't think they have anyone that can do that. It sounded like they maybe had a developer from within their entire contract company that they might have assisting them a little bit part-time, but they still don't have a developer that is specifically on that contract specifically. And so they're still reaching out to me for that. And it's like, yeah, I can try to get that information to you. So I did that this morning, sent him the information about it. And then just after, I didn't realize, but I had a Colorado call. So Sogeti is broken up into, as you would imagine, since we're an international company, or I guess Capgemini is an international one. But even Sogeti is. We have Sogeti US and Sogeti not US. Sogeti offshore or something. Anyway, so the Colorado district, I guess is what we're called. I don't really know. Business unit. Colorado business unit is, we meet every month on a Teams call, and I didn't realize that today was that meeting. So I joined the meeting this morning, and during the meeting, I was just expecting, let's all touch base. What projects are you working on? How's your team doing? And like there were about 15 people there or something like that having this discussion, and he went through each person. But it ended up, I ended up getting a task that I need to follow up on later this afternoon. And then it started. Everything was just coming in. And I'm like, yeah, I'll be able to get that information to you later this afternoon. And then just now, like 10:20, which is what I was trying to tell you I was doing when I went to the welcome screen, I was asked to summarize a meeting that we had yesterday with the client. And it's like, you were there, you could also summarize. But since I was pegged for it, I'm like, yes, I'll do it. So I quickly wrote up the email using my notes about what exactly we were doing, or what we talked about in the meeting, and what takeaways were, and what our actions are going to be, the dev team's actions are going to be regarding this topic. So that was fun. And then I was meeting with another group just before the stream, and I got pegged for a couple of action items on that I was like, yes, I'll follow up on that later this afternoon. And so now I have like a million things that are on reserve for later this afternoon. A Friday that I need to follow up on. So that's going to be great. That's going to be fun. That's why I have this little countdown timer. So anyway, enough about me. The thing that I just did was I was talking about the changes that we made on Wednesday, which was to fix the account summary refresh, which now works. And what ended up happening... Yeah, okay. What ended up happening is you guys saw me do this. But the first thing that we did yesterday after picking up the issue, after deciding which issue we were going to work on, was created a branch for the issue. Number 16, fix account summary refresh. And I created that branch. And I could have sworn that when you create a branch, it automatically switches to that branch. But at some point, I ended up back in main. And I'm not exactly sure why. So all of the work that we did yesterday that I committed at the end of the day was committed directly to main. This is why you have like safeguards on your primary branch that say you're not allowed to commit to this branch without a PR kind of thing. But I don't have that in this project. Maybe I should eventually, but it's fine though, because the changes that we made are good. I just need to, yeah. Thank you, Dukasoft. You understand. I just need to point the, and the way that I knew that is this branch is still local. And I was like, why is this still local when I know that I did a push and it says successfully push to origin/main, create a pull request. And when I clicked on create a pull request, it took me to this window, which is what triggered the, you checked everything into main, buddy. Because it's like, there are no changes between main and main. So I'm like, oh, well, poop. My bad. So I need to find the commit that I just made that fixed this, and then I will associate that with the issue that is account summary does not refresh. And the way that you get to commits is by clicking on this button. Okay, so this is the commit for added logic to refresh account summaries and transaction history. And so this commit number is F15-4E F7. And so I'm going to associate. Isn't there a way? Accidentally, I'm going to do I accidentally did the work in the main branch. Fixed with commit. And I don't know if you still put the hash for commits. Can you reference a commit in a GitHub issue? Issue it. Yeah, I know those. But what about specific to a commit? How to link a commit to an issue. You have to put it in the commit notes. So I wonder if I can modify or amend the commit. Amend. amend. Edit. Fixes issue number 16. Amend. Changes, push. Oh, pull then push. Okay, now what do you say? Signori commit. F5. There it is. And so now this issue should... Oh. It's kind of weird because I thought that when you do this, it automatically closes. But anyway, I'm going to set it to done and say I accidentally did the work on main branch. And close with comment. Issue complete. Terminado. Okay, so happy Community Day, everyone. I am hopping into, oh, I already am in there. And you can see my name up at the top left. I am hopping into the Discord voice channel to invite anyone who feels like having a discussion about whatever kind of technology topic you want, or maybe there is something that you are working through or just having fun with regarding your job, regarding life, regarding software development. Maybe there's some methodologies you want to discuss. Anything that you feel like talking about, you are welcome to hop into any of the Discord voice channel waiting rooms. So like the stream waiting room, for example, and I'll pull you into the stream room and we can have a discussion. Just keep in mind that if you do hop into a voice channel, into the stream room, that your voice will carry over on the stream, and the stream is posted to YouTube sometime 24 hours after the stream ends. If nobody has any topics that they want to talk about, then I certainly do. And don't worry, it's not griping. It's not what my latest conversation stuff has been regarding. Like, one thing that I tend to do, possibly because I'm an INTJ, if I am typed correctly or whatever. But anyway, something that I have noticed is I will come up with a solution or start working on a thing in order to prevent future work. I love to do a whole bunch of stuff all at once up front, just jam it in and then play later. The difficulty that I run into on occasion is play later never comes, and I just end up work. And anyway, and never finish. Yep. Mojofawad knows. And so I've been trying to balance that out a lot more lately, where at the end of my workday, I'm done with my workday. I don't have my work phone with me. I don't have my work laptop open, and I don't respond to work-related things. But the thing that I'm trying to get to with this opening is that I also tend to forecast. I tend to, it's called using my NI, using my introverted intuition, to find patterns of, I see this thing and I know that these are the usual things that happen as a result. So I want to plan, I want to have stuff set up so that when this thing happens, because it's not a matter of if, when this thing happens, then all we have to do is push a button and everything is ready. Or I already have everything done. But as part of this team, it's been a lot more difficult to do that. I will start moving things in one area, and then I'll be told, stop touching that area. Work on this thing. It's like, that's what you told me about this thing over here. And you told me not to touch that thing. And so it's like, it gets to the point where I want to trust my project manager to assign me the work that is priority that we should be focusing on. Because the other thing that happened before was they would say something like, well, come up with timelines, come up with level of effort, and then work on the thing that you think is priority. And then when I start doing that, it's the wrong thing. So they're like, work on this other thing. So I'm like, okay, you know what the priorities are. You'll tell me what to work on. And that happens. But then they'll say, stop working on that, work on this. And I'm like, but you just said, work on this. So for me, that kind of interruption really, really inhibits my productivity. Switching from one task to another when it's not me choosing to, because it's a natural flow of, I was working on this thing is kind of involved with that, so I'll go ahead and tweak a little bit there. And yeah, instead it's like full stop on this thing, move to this thing, which for me means make a new branch that doesn't have any of the changes that you just made for the work that you were doing on this thing that also affect this thing that you're going to be working on over here. And yeah, I don't know. And then like this, did you guys hear when I was talking about localizations? Context switching is the worst, said Spudgooness. Spudgooness? Spud. Yes, it is. And I'm okay with context switching as long as I'm the one that's choosing the context, because for me, I have this thread that could relate them to each other that I can follow. But if someone else is saying full stop, go, then that is like, you're expecting me to full stop in an instant, which typically for INTJs, it's slow. We're like a train that once we get going, we're going. And then it takes us a while to stop and then move another direction. But hopefully, what you'll hear from most mature INTJs, or just INTJs in general, they have multiple tracks with trains running on them. So if these trains are close enough together, then you could just hop back and forth between them because they're pretty similar tracks, kind of thing. I feel this so much. Well, you know what? If it is a topic that you think is worth discussing, because this is the thing that I'm feeling the most right now, which is this whole, I prepare for this thing. I'm like, guys, we should be looking out for this. And they're like, no, don't worry about that. Look at this thing over here. And then the thing happens. And they're like, scramble, stop what you're doing, work on this thing over here. It's a fire. And I'm like, kind of a fire. I already did put some things in place, but if you let me keep working on it, then I would have this thing done and the other thing would take less time to do. But yeah, just let me know, Mojofawad. No pressure or anything like that. But we can go for longer if you have meaningful conversation to contribute to that. Otherwise, I'll just read it off in chat. I have a hangnail, and I'm trying not to peel it. Oh, he joined. There we go. Okay, so one thing, since you haven't been in the Discord voice channel, you might want to do is mute the stream on your end. Only, oh, you don't have your headphones on though. Only listen to me through Discord. And that way you don't have a delay and you don't hear me twice. And I'll also share my screen in Discord. Yeah, feel free to mic check.
Oh, word. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Start virtual camera. Turn on camera. Okay, so now you can see the stream in Discord as well, if you don't feel like switching back and forth.
I think it would just be a little bit more, or like the timing will be better on Discord.
Yep. Oh, I have a good time on Discord. Oh.
Yeah, so I don't know. not the same personality type. It's like relatively close. However,
Are you
like
ENTJ?
P.
ENTP. INTP.
ENT.
ENTP.
Yeah,
Okay.
sorry. Um,
NETI. That's quite a bit different.
uh, I don't. I didn't follow it much. It's kind of one of those things that, when I found out about it, I had a lot going on, and I was diagnosed with like ADHD as an adult. So my psychiatrist at the time was like, I mean, I
There's
care
some
about
tools that you
personality
could
types.
use.
Oh, well, that too. But like the
Oh.
context switching is a huge one that I feel, for instance, especially when being told not to look at something or not to work on something. Um, so I was just wondering, like, how do you deal with it, or do you just kind of go
Have
with
a
the flow and?
breakdown, obviously. So
That's really, yeah,
like
that's where I'm at.
so the one of the main differences that our two personality types have is that I will take situations and boil them down to patterns
Okay.
and just kind of turn everything into this simplistic pattern. So in with enough experiences, when they tell me to context switch, I can just say, okay, does it fit one of these patterns that are already pre-warmed up, or am I going to have to start something from cold start, essentially?
Okay.
And that, if I ever have to go to cold start, then there's another common thing that happens with my personality type called tiger mode, where if there's a fire, somehow I just kick in and get stuff done, know what to do,
Mm-hmm.
tell, with your personality type, I'm pretty sure if you're ENTP, you lead with this thing called extroverted intuition, which is the opposite of what I lead with. And extroverted intuition will see a concept and you'll be like, this can apply to this and this and this and this. And you'll
Yeah.
have all of this. How can I use this thing with all of these things? So when you're context switching, you're like, all right, here's this new information. How can I use it with all of this other stuff? So I think that it's harder on you because you have just this way of taking an information and trying to apply it to everything, as opposed to what I
That
do, which is take everything and boil it down to one common thing.
interesting. Yeah, no, I mean that it feels like you hit the nail on the head there.
Awesome.
But like, I guess like the work related wise, I guess for instance, not to, out myself too much, I think. No, I'll be good. There's a project that we have a lot of clients that we help, and there's a project that I've been given a lot of context of, that we like meet with the client for the first time on Tuesday, essentially.
Okay.
They provided the context, and I started looking at it and started problem solving like right away. Given we work with Excel a lot, so I'm kind of just, I know it.
Inside
Excel,
out.
yeah.
VBA macros
Um,
everywhere.
uh, honestly, TypeScript now.
Oh,
I
cool.
love TypeScript so much. Um, and I've been waiting on our senior dev to provide access to other things so I can work on actual tasks that I have at hand. But until, I still don't have it. So I mean, I started just kind of looking at it and started asking questions, and I was basically told, hey, like, don't worry about it till Tuesday. And I'm
It's like,
sitting
but I
here
want to
like,
prepare.
yeah, like I want to know as much as I can, because like we may be able to like have an answer come Tuesday.
If you think about it
But
just a little bit, you might have something to actually discuss, kind of thing.
yeah, I mean, they laid everything out for me when they, wrote up like, hey, like, this is the problem I'm trying to deal with. And I mean, they laid it all out there, and I was like, this is simple, but I just need a little bit more context, because the solving the problem and like being able to demo something like that context, I have an idea of how like I would get to it, but I wouldn't be able to like solve that problem in that meeting without everybody just watching me for 2 hours
Right.
at most, you know. Um, so what do you do like when you know you're told not to work on something? Is it
Essentially.
just like do you just like say okay and go with the flow, or do you kind of just like do what you need to do and then like secretly try to work on it?
I mean, I never do anything secretly. I try not to do anything secretly, I should say. I get my hand slapped by them, and I don't like that feeling. I don't like feeling like I'm doing something wrong, even though I'm doing something with the intent of being helpful.
Right.
Um, I am going to get rid of this thing here. And so what I usually end up doing, because my integrity tells me that I have to, is I'll make my statement, I'll do
Mm-hmm.
my counter argument that says this will be beneficial because XYZ. But then my project manager typically says no, and just that. No reasons. It's just no. Um, you need to be working on this. You need to be focusing on this. So then I will say, okay, I defer to you. You know what's best for the team. So because I'm able to hold on to this kind of, I'm doing this out of respect for someone else that is in an authoritative position for this team and to be a
Mm-hmm.
team member, I can let go of those other things, even though they're still eating away at the back of my mind. And then the bomb eventually does go off and says, you need to be focused on this fire. So
Okay. So
typically, it's just, yes, I do go with it after making my statement that this is important.
right. So I'm with you there. I mean, that's what I've been doing so far. Especially like on a big like where the company's heading next type of argument that I've or discussion that I've had. Me
Or
and
even still a good word. I mean, it depends on how the conversation goes, but
yeah, no, they tell
argument
me
is not negative.
I think about my words too much. Because they were like, I mean, do you just think this is a bad idea? Like at some point, you know, they asked that, and I was like, I don't think it's the best idea. And they're like, okay, so it's a shit idea, and I was like, no, that's not.
I find that to be the case a lot with NETI, with those two in the top two spots. Um, but where the way that you use a word really, really matters.
Right. So because like I've ran into this so much. I mean, just I'm new to this job and new to software development as a job. And I mean,
I'm familiar.
I'm some yeah, like I automated a lot of my tasks with Python back in the like at previous
Cool.
jobs. So I understand the general logic, and I know I don't know enough to. I got blessed with the opportunity of being able to learn on the job. Um, so like you know I don't want to if I lose this and you know I can't necessarily like find another software job as easily. So like I try to be nice about it, but however like I still think that there are some things. So like anyway, going forward on like you know the next time you may run into this, do you change it up? Because for instance, I have an idea. We were talking about CMSs the other day. They want to use something that I don't think will integrate well, given the fact that our entire platform is an MVC project.
Application,
But
right?
rather than just saying, "Hey, like we shouldn't use a CMS that a CMS like Hootsuite or
Yeah, something templated that you just fill in the blanks.
yeah, that's not meant for like software companies. Like we shouldn't be using one
Right.
of these. We should use something else instead of like saying that. I kind of just want to demo it, like not give them the
Mm-hmm.
option to research it because all of their research, you know, if for the people that aren't going to be technical that are going to be involved, the ones that like are actually going to need it, like these, you know, .NET MVC web or CMS websites, like they don't tell you much for the person that's not technical. Um, so like in future instances, you know, is it better to just like prepare for it with like something that would be a sort of live demo where if that makes sense?
Yeah, I like this question
Okay.
a lot. So, one of the things that I consider or have been considering more lately is, well, I guess first of all, I do what you just did, which is say, I'm new to this. I don't know much about this. You guys know more about this than me, so I'll defer to you. However, based off of what I know, here is my suggestion for the direction we
Hmm.
go. Um, and that is a discussion that's had with the team, but generally the team, well, not really the team. There's one member on the team that is super receptive to brand new ideas, one member that's like, this is the stuff that works, keep going with this. And then the project manager that's like, well, don't do anything that will make us have to maintain new technologies and, you know, nothing that is new work.
Right.
And it's like that, it makes sense. However, this is going to save us work in the future if we do this now, kind of stuff.
Hmm.
So, for the thing that I've needed to start considering now is, will this thing that I'm proposing give us tech debt in maintenance cost, in the initial learning curve implementation? Is the team going to be receptible or receptive to it? And if not, are there things that I could do to maybe pitch this to them in a better light, such as
Right.
creating a quick demo? Here's a proof of concept. And we
Right.
base so much off of proof of concepts. We
Okay.
have an entire repo that's just full of, you go here first, do your proof of concept. If your proof of concept takes you more than, say, 4 hours,
Hmm.
probably not something that you should be demoing to a group. But if you have this idea that's like, we're going to implement this entire thing that's just going to be super hard to maintain, not fit
Hmm.
for our solution, then, and they don't let you work on it, or you feel like they won't let you work on it, that's kind of a your time thing. And I don't want to recommend spending time outside of work hours on it, but
Yeah. No,
that's where I would do that. Yeah.
I, and that's what I've been doing so far. I mean, most of my questions, I think the other day I asked a question in the Discord, uh, regarding server
A
hosting
new
and stuff. Like,
MVC app and then having someone update the content, and it's like we don't have the
yeah,
client. Yeah.
and it's mostly for that. I mean, like, I have a server at home. I I've been told I could spin up an Azure VM. It's just I I know my Linux server better than I know how to navigate Azure in the short term. Um, and I know they're not going to be too different. But Azure seems more GUI focused
Yeah,
than I'm used
typically.
to. Um, so most of my question, like, I'm constantly trying to spend whatever time I can, to just feel like, or I always feel like, I need to catch up, but just to get to a place where I can establish, like, hey, like, no, this is like, I'm where I'm trusted to make the next decision. Um, in these aspects, it's a small company. I mean, it's a startup, so we're a total of 6 people with two or three technical people. Um, so I mean, there's a little bit of flexibility as far as like who the decision makers are. We don't have project managers, the whole huge team, huge company,
Yeah, it's more like
structure.
a conversation
Yeah,
than it is someone like delegating work and
yeah.
just
So I
taking
mean,
your input to delegate work.
on the time end, like, I have the time. Even during work hours, of like, if I can't work on this thing that we're gonna talk about on Tuesday, then like I'm still waiting on access. Uh, so I can fill in the time easily, in or out of work. But no, 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 that was genuinely helpful. I feel super green to it all. So I
And I
mean,
think it's
most
easy
of my
for me to
questions are gonna
relate
be
with
that.
you because I am treating myself as if I'm brand new to working on a team because I've always been a solo dev. And before that, I was working in a human resources office doing dev type work unofficially, essentially.
Mhm.
And so this
That
is my
yeah,
first team dev job.
gotcha. Yeah, no, that's essentially how I was. I was at a company that had been around for 20 years, manufacturing. Um, Everything on the manufacturing side requires, inventory and product numbers and, from beginning to end, how do we take metal and convert it into a product and we sell it? Everything in between that, like the company did not have in the correct database, and they they made this homebrew software. Like the original owners of that company wrote their own software to be an inventory tracker. However, like it didn't write to QuickBooks. It only read from
It didn't carry
QuickBooks.
over to any other systems.
Right. So company gets bought, they hire me and they're like, hey, like we need somebody to start converting all of this and putting it into QuickBooks. And I'm not a repetitive task guy. I'm
You're an
gonna figure
automator.
out. Yeah.
Awesome.
So I did my best to like create this ERP type system. I mean, QuickBooks wasn't, at the end of the day, wasn't the correct place to put it all either. And
I mean, I don't have
we
experience with it, so I can't agree or disagree, but I take your word for it.
it's just not the best for manufacturing. There's only like a couple of apps out there for people who manufacture everything in house that work well and track costs well. QuickBooks just couldn't track the costs as well. But getting it all, but if it was in QuickBooks, getting it to anything else would be possible, would be easier because
It's at least
it's an industry
better.
standard product. So people have those conversions. People have the tools you need to convert something. So a lot of my job, like I had to learn how to access SQL. I had to learn how to. These are all things that when I was doing self-learning years ago, they kind of just walk you through, but they walk you through starting something up and not, hey,
Right.
like we've placed you in this company and
Here's
nobody,
this existing thing.
yeah, and nobody around you knows a password to anything. Nobody around you knows.
Yeah, we've had a
You
very
know.
similar experience. And
It was a great learning opportunity, and that's usually where I leave it with like how I liked that job. I mean, I learned a lot, but there was nobody to ask questions from that wasn't
yeah,
the
you were the
internet.
person to answer the questions.
Yeah. And with it came like a lot of, great things, but at the end of the day, like especially just being so like early in my career, I was just like, hey, like I need somebody to learn from. Um Left that to take an intern. I'm like going to school online. Left that to take an internship at Red Hat, and like, oh my god, it was great there.
Awesome.
Big company, they have people there to be mentors, um and now I'm like, at a small company, so I have like the small company experience. I have a few months of like big company internship experience, and at least now I have somebody to learn from whenever they have the time to respond to me in Slack. On your teams, are people generally available?
I have a very fun situation for this team. It's pretty much similar to the size of your team. It's me and
Okay.
2 other devs, a project manager who also does technical work,
Okay.
a QA tester, and then 2 people that are for a different portion of the app. So we have a UEFI component that runs,
Okay.
when you start your computer in UEFI mode.
Yeah.
And so they do a lot of work with that and checking the BIOSes and making sure that hardware and stuff works. So I don't really communicate with those people unless I need access to a test machine. Hi, Ebitus. And the 2 devs, like I said, they are just hot and cold. There's the I heard about this new technology. Let's see how we can make it work in our app. He has a similar function stack as me, except that he'll take the idea first and then try to fit it into patterns, as opposed to just seeing patterns and everything naturally. but he wants to implement all of this new stuff. And it's like, it's awesome because that's how we drive innovation. But it's
Hmm.
not awesome because we have this product that we need to clean up and make amazing before we can start innovating on it. And then we have the guy that's like, don't change anything because if you change even the smallest thing, you're going to break the entire build kind of situation. And we won't be able to maintain it. I don't know that technology, therefore it must be bad. I've been burned. They've both been in the industry for 30 plus years. So it's kind of like,
Okay.
I respect their opinions, but I'm in the middle where it's like up front and early, let's do all of our feature implementation. Let's use the new technologies if they are applicable, but first consider whether or not it's applicable to use and then
Okay.
implement them. Um, when it came to things that are like, I was hired to do all of the UI redesign work. So they have
Hmm.
an existing backend on the application. I was just supposed to make a front end that keeps all of the same functionality the existing app does. When it came to figuring out how certain things were called, it's like, yeah, we don't work in silos. You can get in contact with any of these guys. But when it came to talking with one of them, it's here's what I don't like about what you're doing because you're using this new stuff. When I talk
Right.
to the other one, it's like, so that you can find that in the documentation. So anyway, take a look at this new thing that I've been working on. It's like, ah. And then they are both at a point where they're, super late in their career. They're like, I'm pretty much done with this whole taking orders from clients, and they're just they seem tired. Is what I'm trying to get
Right.
at.
I
And
think that's
so they
I
go
hear that's
wherever.
the industry standard with .NET, that most .NET developers are now retiring, and companies are.
It's so weird.
It's a good place to be if you're young and know it, you know. But just most people like aren't using that, so, or at least like most people aren't learning that.
Yeah,
From
that is
from
true.
what I'm
And I
hearing.
don't understand that because it's pretty
Everybody.
powerful.
So everybody I met that work at big companies, they're all on Java.
Yep. Java, or
Um,
like most of the stuff that our consulting company works with is Angular, and it's like, really?
yeah, and that's where I've been struggling. Where I'm at now, I was I've done a lot of self-learning, and I had like small little projects, but I never worked with .NET, the environment. And I understand, what's I can read the code and kind of understand like what's going on. Um, I follow the general logic, but when it comes, like, I have to add a new page in our MVC model. Um, and I'm lost. Uh, to an extent, because there's all these other components that I'd never
Yeah,
really worried about.
yeah, especially with um, the MVC project type, because there's a lot of stuff that you get for free with it that they don't
Hmm.
really tell you about. It's like when you're creating a new page, you're essentially creating a new controller if it's a new route, and then that
Hmm.
gives you a view associated with it. But the controller is the thing that says, go and get this view and then return it on
Hmm.
request to this page. But does it really tell you that anywhere in the MVC tutorials that you follow? They're like, no, just add a controller and then go to the page. Right click and go to open view or whatever it is.
Yeah, and most of the time, I would, I mean, I don't know if like it's something, if it was bad practice, but I was always the terminal, like, hey, just create the file in the terminal, open it up, and
Yeah, so you like doing more like make file kind of stuff.
yeah. So, at first I was like, all right, like I'm just gonna create the CS HTML file, give it the bare bones in Vim because I'm a monster. Um, but like I didn't need to do much. I was just trying to prove it, and then like I go to open it, or run the app and go to the link that I thought I created, and it's just like, no,
Yeah, because
this
the
isn't how this works.
CSHTML file is not a routable page.
Yeah.
It's just a page that will generate HTML that'll get sent over the wire.
So I don't know. I'm gonna continue to have questions.
Mm.
I'm sure for I don't know how long.
Well, what are you currently using to do the MVC dev work now?
Visual Studio, but now I have to learn how to do these things in Visual Studio. Um,
Again, a lot of GUI dependent. Like you don't have to do it with GUIs, but
they
just
make
the
it,
whole right click, add new controller, and
yeah,
it puts it in the right folder, sets up the view for you.
right, yeah, and that's what I'm learning now, where like it's gonna be easier to put my hand on the mouse. Um, and I'm a trackball guy too. But I don't know. I just like staying
Well,
on the keyboard as much as I can.
I
Um,
I definitely had that. Um, and I still do love using the keyboard for most things, but it really has become second nature to move back and forth. It doesn't feel as jarring as I thought it would.
that's fair. Are you a keyboard person too?
Yeah, yeah,
Or
absolutely. I
okay.
mean, I still prefer doing as much as I can with keyboard, especially all the
Oh,
keyboard shortcuts that you get in Visual Studio that, like, for example, you're on this page and you just want to get to the Solution Explorer and it's collapsed.
right,
And it's like, well, just push a keyboard shortcut and now you're in the Solution Explorer. Or look for an entire file if you want
right.
using
Yeah.
keyboard. And I took my hands off the keyboard because I'm waving them as I'm talking to you, but that's about it.
The sorry. Oh, no, no, no. Yeah. So now I'm having to look up like hotkeys and all those
Mm-hmm.
shortcuts that
And you're
it's
already
just
like hard coded Vim shortcuts.
only for the basic stuff. I have a love-hate relationship. Well, no, I just have a hate relationship with Microsoft. Um, I don't. I didn't prefer Visual Studio Code. I'm using Visual Studio itself now, but I was an Atom guy, and then Microsoft bought GitHub, and
Mhm.
they're sunsetting Atom, or they sunset Atom, and I was just like, Microsoft, what are you doing? Because like Microsoft's UI is just, it's a Microsoft product. No matter what you're using, it doesn't have to say Microsoft on it, but it has the Microsoft look.
Mhm.
Um, and I don't know, it's just never been my cup of tea. And I've always been a Mac user, so uh, they I'm not gonna say it's intentional, but they never make sure everything works
Right.
properly. Um,
There always seem to, I'm going to say it in the more politic way. There always seem to be issues lingering in Mac that seem like they could have been resolved.
yes. Oh, in fact, so I have a M1, so the ARM chip, and
Mhm.
in my on my Mac, and I did this assignment in Excel for one of my classes, and we had to use a random function, but you seed it. So, when you seed something, you're supposed to be getting the same data. However, and this was like one of my final exams, I got this question wrong, and I was like, I know I did everything correctly. Um, so but I had done all my
Got me in
other
suspense because I'm
exams
really
in
curious what
Windows. Yeah,
happened.
no, I did all my other exams in Windows, and I just decided to use my MacBook this time. So I submit the assignment, I get it wrong. It was like a 96. I mean, I either way, like I got an A in
It
the
wasn't
class.
100, was it? I'm kidding.
Yeah. Well, I was like, there's no way I got this wrong. I was like, so I before I even email my professor, I borrow my girlfriend's laptop and I'm like, hey, like I just need to try this one thing in Excel. And side by side, I'm going in there, I see it the same way. I'm putting all the same inputs in. I get two different answers. And I'm like, hey, wait up. What is this? And I don't know what it is
Mm-mm. I
in
don't know how
the
random
software
works.
level.
Uh-oh.
Well, I don't, yeah, I mean, I don't know
We
what it
know the
is in the software
overarching concept,
specifically.
yeah.
Um, but I had to email my professor. I was like, hey, just so you know, like I've reproduced this issue. Gave him the whole like Stack Overflow of like what I've tried. And I was like, you don't have to change my grades. Like I got an A+ in the class. I'm good. But if any other students
Are on the
have an issue,
borderline.
like this is possibly what it is.
Yeah.
Um, and he appreciated it. I mean, he gave me feedback. He's like, this is good to know. I I do this on an Intel Mac. I wouldn't have thought that like the M1 or the ARM chip would have made a difference. I was like, yeah, like when we started getting to the kernel, I'm lost. You know how like that structure works.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Microsoft's just, I'm a Linux guy, and because we're on framework, I can't even use my, because they're cool if I use my personal computer,
Machine.
or they have a MacBook, um, that's available at work for, you know, the marketing people. It's just we're on framework, so I can't. It's
That's sad.
no. We're moving to core. We're moving to core, but
Good. Maybe you can convince him to go to Blazor too.
uh I thought about it. I mean, since we're making the move, like in my, actually no. This is a question I'll have for you since you're more experienced, because like I said, I'm new. In my opinion, during the migration, make all the big changes.
Let's
What
see.
they're wanting to do is make the
Mhm.
migration, then change everything.
Yeah. Which kind of makes sense. The I can agree with what they're suggesting
Okay.
because I think that would be the approach that I would take. Only because I was forced into that kind of situation, not because I have experience with both ways of doing it. So, with my previous position, it was taking a JSP, actually multiple JSP apps, and
Mm-hmm.
turning them into .NET applications, which I went to MVC
Mm-hmm.
because that's what I knew most. Then I went from MVC to Blazor. So this is kind of the same thing as going from. No, it isn't. Nope. Gosh, that's difficult. Because I went to MVC.NET Framework 4.7. And I went
Okay.
from that to .NET Core Blazor, and that was pretty easy.
The migration itself was easy, or
Yeah, from well, just because of the way that I put the MVC application together, it was almost exactly the way that I would put a Blazor app together today, with lots of partials that render on the page on with behind flags essentially.
okay. Interesting. Now
So it's kind of
is
componentized as it was. Yeah.
this okay? So I'm gonna we we operate in the same way. I haven't looked at Blazor too much. I mean, we're on MVC, Razor web pages. Microsoft's documentation always made it sound like those were two separate things.
There are.
Um,
So what you just said were two mixed technologies.
so but MVC is, I guess, like explain that. I'm
Cool. So first, because Tyron brought it up during the Discord discussion, MVC
mhm.
in itself is just the programming pattern that is you have models using controllers. They all have their specific
Okay.
purposes. But the Microsoft MVC web application is just something that takes that MVC architecture and says we have a controller that is going to be the
Mhm.
thing that receives all of your requests and does all of your routing for you, that maps to a view, and then you can have that view populate data based off of a model that's passed in. So a view model or a page model.
Okay.
That's MVC. Razor Pages is a different type of web application that you can create in Visual Studio that uses the concept of routable pages. So these .cs HTML pages that you were trying to route to in an MVC app,
Mhm.
you actually will be able to route directly to those Razor Pages in the Razor Pages project type. And they have a code
Okay.
behind file instead of a controller that says load the data, send it to the page.
In so MVC. So I guess like I don't know. I've been told we're using Razor Pages,
Here's an
so
easy way to
now
find
I'm
out.
I
Create
think
a new
like
project.
yeah, I think if you, so yeah, I think where I thought I was understanding it was Razor Pages allows for the HTML um allows for the C# within the CSHTML file. So I thought we were just using Razor web pages, or like Razor pages, I guess, in
So yeah,
MVC.
that's the hard thing. I'll show you this screen here if I can figure out what I'm doing. I don't think I have a local in here yet. Let's put this in here. Okay, when you go to create a new .NET Core web application, for example, then this creates a Razor Pages, ASP.NET Razor Pages application. And the way
Okay.
that you know that is you have this pages folder with a whole bunch of .cshtml files. The .cshtml extension stands for Razor Page.
Okay.
So these are Razor pages per se.
Oh.
Even though this project is a Razor Pages project, but what if we added an MVC application? Project type, whatever you want to call it. MVC. Here we are. Party. When we go into this project, we will see a models, views, and controllers folder. Yeah, it gets worse with Blazor because we have Razor components, which are .razor. So we have a controller, but our views are still .cshtml files, which are Razor pages.
Okay.
So that's the confusing part of it to me.
Okay. So I'm using. Okay. Now.
Yeah. Do you have a pages folder?
No. Everything's in the MVC side.
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily need to worry about anything Razor related when I say MVC.
Right.
Because
I mean,
still, okay.
You have to say there are related views, and we'll assume the views are written with Razor markup.
Yeah. Okay. So now with Blazor, from what the little skimming I did, and the reason I didn't approach really touching it more is I read that was mostly single page application.
Yeah, at present it is. Very few static pages, very few routing between actual pages, postbacks, actually no postbacks. Everything is done on a single page with this. If you're using, so there are two types of Blazor. I can't think of what the word is. Flavors is what we'll call them.
Okay.
But you have the one that's WASM, which means that you are loading the .NET runtime as a WASM file in the browser and then running your .NET application through that runtime.
Okay.
In the browser. That's Blazor WebAssembly as a single page application. And you know that it's a single page application because it only has one index.html file, loads the entire application into a div, and then that div is updated by this runtime. Blazor server is same thing happens, but the initial page that you get is rendered on the server, sent to the client, and then updates are constantly sent back and forth between the server and the client.
Okay. Now,
hosting models.
I assume sometimes like that's mixed as far as client and server.
Never mixed until Blazor United, which is coming out in .NET 8.
Okay.
Which now Blazor United makes it more feasible for you to say, hey guys, we have this MVC application. There's this thing called Blazor that makes it to where you have a lot more user interactivity, more responsiveness, a lot fewer postbacks so that the page refreshes whenever you do something that, like checking a checkbox that needs to say, store this value on the server when that checkbox is checked. And like right now you could use JavaScript and Ajax or fetch calls or whatever. But when you can do it all in C#, why would you use JavaScript? And your answer is because I love TypeScript.
I like TypeScript and its integration. So I mean, it's what's replacing, I guess, VBA for the most part. Actually, I learned it with Google Sheets during my internship, and then realized Microsoft had something similar. Because
Yeah, I
I was
didn't know
given
that they
this.
had TypeScript type stuff for doing their macros. That's awesome.
Yeah, they're trying to push it. Microsoft's trying to push everybody to Power Automate, I believe.
Hmm.
And if you do all the clicking like you would when recording a macro in Excel or something,
Mhm.
if you do all the clicking necessary, like it records a macro and it or it's not showing you the VBA that it had to write for that. And I know it seems like Power Automate's doing the same thing. I could be 100% wrong.
Or it's writing the
Um,
script as you're taking the actions.
yeah, it's writing it, but most people never see it.
Hmm.
For instance, I have a buddy who, um, he's a consultant, and one of his clients where he works is Microsoft, and he's working with Power Automate a lot. I'm like, he's like, why don't you do that with Power Automate? And I'm like, why don't you do that with Office scripts? And like, what we're really asking each other is, why don't you use the GUI? Why don't you just type out the code?
Right.
It sounds like. Now, I guess why I was asking about client and server side, trying to figure out the best way to. We have some UX issues that I'm trying to help fix. One of which is, if you say like, I'll try to make this example so I don't. I mean, it's not. Yeah, just one day if I
Take your time.
oust myself. Um,
It'll
say
just be on
like,
YouTube. No, I promise I'll not post that video to YouTube unless I
oh no
somehow
you're
cut.
you're good. I mean it's probably not going to be a big deal. Just better safe than sorry. Say you're software developer A, I'm software developer B. And we have an account. We each have an individual account in this web app we're working on.
Okay.
Now say you upload a file for me and it generates a response. Or sorry, so like say in our web app we upload a file, and it generates a response based on something it finds in that file. Like, yes, this is true. No, it's false. Now,
And tell me about this response really quick. Does it happen as soon as you upload the file, or do we get it later?
so that's what I'm trying to. If
Okay. Okay. Go ahead then.
it's not as soon as it happens, it has to process it. It's a grading engine. So it has to process the file, and after it processes it, if software developer A is the person who's being graded essentially, um if they're on that page, it will generate, the grade will show up on the page
Okay.
essentially.
Okay.
Now say software developer B, we're just going to say student instructor because that's really what I'm getting at. Say the instructor, for whatever reason, the student couldn't submit the file, so the instructor submits it on their behalf. That's a function. The instructor goes to submit it, but the processing and the grade never generates until the student goes back to that page. So the professor, can see all the grades. If the student doesn't go back to that page to see their grade, the professor actually never receives the grade.
That's
So
interesting.
that's why. So I haven't looked too much at server side versus client side. I know when I learned basic web dev stuff, they explain it to you and they're just like, but we're going to be working with this. However, I'm confused as to, I mean, like, this is one thing I don't think is great on the UX side. I just don't know if this is why this is happening, I guess. Like,
I have a
somehow
few
the
ideas.
database isn't populating until the
Yeah.
student is looking at the view.
Right. So this document that is being submitted is essentially somehow tied to the student, regardless of who submits it. That's kind of
Correct.
the number one thing that we would look at. But the thing I would look for is, does the processing start if the instructor submits it on the student behalf? And does it finish? Of course, would be the next
Okay.
logical one. If those two are true and it's just that the grade is not being populated where it's supposed to until the student goes to the page, there's more stuff to look at there, which I would set aside for now because those
Okay.
first two things are most important. My assumption is that yes, processing doesn't start until the student goes to a page where the page load says check for this student's record. Are there any pending submitted documents that need to be
Mm-hmm.
processed? If
Okay.
so, process them now and then show the grade.
Interesting. I wonder if I can replicate that because I don't have the access currently to, at least in the production version, to see if it's being processed, and it's a very specific function that only like the I don't know if like the development environment has the ability for me to be able to actually test this.
Do that. Right.
Um, from
Yeah,
what I was,
I would still have like a million questions to fully
yeah,
understand the processing part. Like,
um,
is the processing part a worker service that's getting fired as soon as it gets a message that there is a document ready to be processed and it works
okay,
independently of the application? Or is it
mm-hmm,
something that's running with the web application that says, I received a request, I'm processing the information, I'm
mm-hmm,
done processing, I'm emitting a response?
okay. So say I'm the student, I upload the file, I get my
Mhm.
grade back without leaving the page, without
Mhm.
it probably refreshes. It may refresh. I don't
It could be an Ajax
think it
thing,
does.
just a JavaScript
Right.
fetch, poll, whatever, or signaler.
The the processing of the file is in the, is one of, I think it's in one of the it's in the solution file somewhere. How much, like, is any of this server slash client side?
Yeah,
I Okay.
anything that's sent from the computer that's uploading the document. All of the
Mm-hmm.
stuff that the person is interacting with, that's all client stuff. Everything that they see, they touch,
Okay.
they do stuff to send to the server or receive information back. And
Okay.
then all of the background processing stuff, that's all the back
Mm-hmm.
end, that's your server.
Okay.
So your server at first would most likely be those controller endpoints.
Mm-hmm.
So when a request is made, the controller receives that request and then does server side stuff and then
Okay.
sends information back to the requester, the client, so that it
Mm-hmm.
can display it all or update or do whatever it's supposed to do.
Okay. But as far as, is this the same context of server client side with, in regards, like with in regards to, what we were previously talking about with
Mhm.
Blazor?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So in Blazor, like again, a WebAssembly application, you would most likely have some kind of hosted backend, like an API. Typically, it's a .NET hosted API,
Okay.
but you can use any API backend. So we send a request, and then it sends us back JSON, XML, whatever content we're expecting to get back. But the thing that receives the request from us is the server
Mm-hmm.
side, and then the thing that sends information to us is the server, and we are the client side,
I've
the
been
browser.
Okay. I don't have a full understanding of APIs yet. I thought I had a small understanding
Oh,
of them.
okay.
However, I've been told uh there are some things that I've been wanting to do that we can't do. I was trying to
Build
have
an
like a
API.
separate project for our backend portal where like the clients use, and then our front end or our customer world facing website. And I was trying to, for marketing and SEO purposes, I was trying to have some of this on the front facing website, but we would have to hide some features due to, like, you have to have access to see some documentation just to try to get sales, I guess. I don't know specifically, but I was told it would be a lot of work to connect that access if they were two separate projects, if that makes
Yeah.
sense, because of the
Like
lack of an
SEO in
API.
itself, well, SEO in itself is a different beast because when you're thinking about what is happening for SEO,
Mm-hmm.
it's a robot that's crawling your website to however far it crawls it. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
it'll trigger your scripts. Sometimes it'll disable all scripts.
Mm-hmm.
So depending on the crawler itself that is gathering your website's information for the search
Mm.
engine, it's only going to really see whatever is statically served by your application.
Gotcha. So on the SEO side, a lot of the stuff, like, we don't have to hide everything. It's just like some specific functionality. Um, I guess we don't want students to see. But everything else, would be great for SEO. It's just being able to have that level of access. I was told we would have to provide them a new login because I guess, don't have the API to connect, if they were two separate projects, to connect the two right
I
now.
mean,
And that's why I'm like, I don't understand what an API is,
kind
I
of.
guess.
Yeah, so I'm gonna oversimplify it, but I think this would help. Think of an API as just a server that is sitting and listening for requests and then
Okay.
responding to those requests.
Okay.
So technically, an MVC application has an API backend. It's just the response that it gives are pages, are static HTML files
Okay.
that are rendered on the server. So they're dynamic files on the server, but once they get
Mm-hmm.
served to the client, they are then static unless you do JavaScript type stuff on the page.
Okay.
But an API really is just a set of endpoints that you send requests to in specific ways using
Mm-hmm.
HTTP methods, get, post, delete, patch, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And then they respond. That's an API.
Okay.
And that's different than most web servers because a web server is you send and you can one important feature about APIs is that you interact with them programmatically,
Mm-hmm.
not through a user interface typically. So you don't browse to a API endpoint and interact
Okay.
with the content. You send a
Gotcha.
request from a button click, from a mouse move, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Then that gets sent to an API. The API responds with well, sometimes human readable. JSON is human readable-ish, but something that the API can send back to the client. The client interprets that and turns it into something the user can interact with.
Okay. Now, for a specific example I can think of, that I think everybody would be familiar with, say, like, in my two different project example, say I'm searching Google, I'm signed into Gmail, I'm signed into Google, I browse to YouTube. What is it that what's going on where YouTube knows I'm signed in as this account? If
Oh,
that makes
okay.
Yeah.
So now we're talking about authentication and authorization, aka identity. So I was going to mention this earlier, but it sounds like what you're really wanting to do is set up authorization or role based access controls that says you're signed
Mm-hmm.
in as a blah, so you have
Mm-hmm.
access to this portion of the site.
Okay, I do have some familiarity with that as of now. So
But yeah,
I'm
that
following
doesn't
along.
really sound like you need and that's where I was getting at this they're kind of right thing about the separate project. But
Okay.
if you are using something like an API, then
Mm-hmm.
typically you don't have a concept of sessions. And a session happens when you have a client to server connection that tracks the time the user goes to the page to the time they leave the page.
Okay.
So that is a session, and that's usually stored in a cookie, and that's usually communicated back and forth with the server. But for something like a Blazor WebAssembly application, it's
Mm-hmm.
stateless, so there is no session. The session belongs to the client only. There's no client server session. So every time you make a request that needs to be authorized, then
Mm-hmm.
we're sending header information that says, here's who I am. These are my claims.
Okay.
And that's what determines whether or not I have access to whatever resources I'm requesting. So for example here, this is just a printout of Twitch chat.
Okay.
And so what's happening is my bot is saying every time I try to connect to Twitch with my bot, it says, these are my claims, this is who I am, let me do these things. And Twitch will read my header information and say, no, you're not that person that you say you are because these hashes don't agree. Or, yes, they do agree, you are allowed to do these things. Holy cow. Sorry. I got like 8 messages just now. So, gosh, yeah, I can just show you this. Let me show you this. Test has track. Has track or just H track? Has track. Okay. So this is all going to be the same application here. And this is kind of the functionality that I think you were talking about.
Okay.
Where I have one login that is an admin account. And as an admin account, I can see app management. And I can manage lookup lists and stuff. But as a user, user A, I don't have access to that specific functionality. So for you, that could mean routing them to a different starting page and having a completely different skin UI look and feel.
Okay.
Based on role, you also have policies, you also have a couple other things. Yeah.
No, I'm familiar with the RBAC only because I don't know if that's how people usually say it.
RBAC, I don't know. RBAC to me is a network device, but whatever.
Okay. The only reason I say that is when I was at Red Hat, like I had said YAML, and somebody was like, "We just say YAML," and I was like, "Oh, cool, good to know."
Be as lazy as possible.
Fair. And because I didn't have like this specified file, I didn't have like this in my references in the right place. When I installed this from the from the repo, I couldn't log into the dev environment. It was like, hey, like we don't know where the roles are. But the error wasn't there for me, so I think our senior dev was on vacation, and he was really the only person that would be able to figure this out with me.
That's terrible.
He was like, he'd be able to answer emails, so it just took a little while. But that's my familiarity with that. But as far as like translating that to, okay, I guess it's mostly I don't know if it's translating, but making sure the accounts are accessible. Yeah. The database is accessible in the 2 different projects, and
yes,
okay,
we didn't actually go to that far yet. Okay. So with having multiple projects, the only thing that you would really do that for is for developers. It has nothing really to do with the functionality of the application. It's more like project management.
Okay.
Where is the repo that we just created? Repo, he says. Project. So let's say that I had one main project for my application to run, but I wanted to have 2 different areas. I wanted one area that was for admins and one area that was for students or teachers or regular users. I could put them in the same project and just use like a new controller for, if it's MVC, Blazor Pages, you actually use a thing called areas.
Okay.
But I would create a new controller, or not. I wouldn't do anything. And I would just call it admin, and then I would use an attribute that just says authorize, and then who I want to authorize to get to any of these pages.
Okay.
And then on startup is where I would say, is the user logged in? If not, direct them to the public facing page. When they log in, determine what role they're in and send them to the appropriate start page for their role.
Gotcha.
So
Yeah.
then what I,
Mhm.
sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, currently, like the only difference is just the subdomain. Before the actual URL instead of www. If anybody uses that anymore, it's just you change that and you're on the different app.
Oh, okay. So that could be different. So that
Uh,
is a
mhm.
different application then, if it's a different
Ye-
subdomain, right?
I believe so. There's two entirely different repos.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but I
Okay.
just don't have access in the to see like exactly how it's being structured.
Yeah. So then that would be the concept of single sign-on, which does take a lot of time to set up.
Yeah.
Or I don't know if it takes a lot of time because I haven't successfully done it myself. I
Mm-hmm.
just know that my attempts weren't successful
I
because
gotcha.
all of like the app that I just showed you, that
Mm-hmm.
has track application,
Mm-hmm.
this is one app in a suite of 7 to 10 web applications that use the exact same user store. So
Okay.
if the user is logged into this app, then that means when they go to other app, it would already have them authenticated with the server, but it wouldn't necessarily give them access if they're not authorized to see this. But they shouldn't have to log into this application individually.
Gotcha.
But you can see that
Now,
it's just changing the subdomain.
at bigger companies, are these usually different areas of developers,
Hmm.
or is it the same
Yeah, like
team?
I can think of a company where one subdomain could be one application managed by one team, and then another
Okay.
one belonging to a completely different team.
Okay. Cool. So I know you were trying to go earlier.
Oh, no worries.
But I don't want to
I
take up too
prefer
much
this
of.
discussion because it is the
um,
topic that I wanted to be on anyway.
yeah, I mean it's up to you. I know I could pick brains for hours. I could definitely fill in time. Um, but if you have to go, like, don't let me hold you up. I'll be here, all week.
I'll be here all
All
week.
year.
Yeah, I don't know. I like right now. Oof. Oof. Right now, I'm just looking at my Azure DevOps, and the build is successful, but I don't see the build. Oh, because it says load one new run, which is not my build. Great. I just merged to master about an hour ago, and I keep saying master because that's what it's currently called.
Yeah. No, it's
But I'm not seeing the pipeline build for that, which is bad because our testers use the most recent merge pipeline. And so I want to update the ticket to say it's done, time for testing, but I can't do that. Yes, I can. I just found it. But then I'm looking at the rest of my workload, which is a lot of bugs and
what
new
are
features.
what are y'all using on the project management side as far as like, are you using Azure workboards? Are you using something like Jira?
So I haven't used Jira yet. I know that
Okay,
it's very, very popular, especially among Java developers.
I've heard about it.
I've only heard about it too. But we are using Azure DevOps, which I have in Azure DevOps and I might be able to show. Azure.com/sign in.
I am also using Azure DevOps.
Awesome. And don't let me influence how you say Azure, but
Uh, it's easier to just call it ADO.
Excuse me. Oh, waiting for my thumbprint. Which, by the way, I think fingerprints is probably one of the least secure um, biometric. If someone really, really wanted to get a hold of your stuff, they could just, knock you out, steal your thumbprint, steal your
Jokes
face.
on them. I I wipe my I wipe my MacBook all the time because I've broken the OS Python too many times, and I think when I like started talking to my mentor at Red Hat, she was like, "Yeah, you don't really want to like touch the OS's Python." And I was like, "Oh," but I've bricked my computer many times doing that. So jokes on them. There's nothing to steal because I don't keep anything on it.
So apparently, I still have access to the place that I used to work, the repo. But
Nice.
the type of thing that I would be doing, or that we do in my current, this is a good one because this does have a pipeline. With the team that I'm currently working on, is every time that we use GitHub Enterprise for our source control, but we use Azure for our CI/CD. So every time we
Okay.
do a PR,
Hmm.
we get a pipeline run, and we have to wait for that run to finish and be successful in order for us to actually be able to merge the PR plus a review.
Okay.
But the way that we get our work items is using Azure boards, DevOps
Yeah.
boards. And so we get our list, we have them in different areas. So right now we're on a 2.2 release, and we're only focused on bugs for 2.2. We assign things to 2.3 or delay for 2.3. They have been using sprints, kind of, or iterations, sorry.
Hmm.
Kind of, but not really. Because it really is just get this stuff done as quickly as you can.
Right.
Wave your hand screaming if you can't.
Yours
But
is
also,
so
don't work on that thing, work on that other thing.
yours is so interesting because like our tasks for instance or our work items are like what I'm actually working on as far as like the changes that I'm making. Like if it's like accessibility fix,
Right, which is
that's what mine says.
funny that you say that one because that's my next one that I'm working on.
I think I may be able to help.
Mm.
I have we have to meet all these requirements by
Mm-hmm.
um for universities and stuff. So uh we have to make sure we're within the WCAG standards and um more so than most other government entities care for. I have a few
Mm-hmm.
friends that are technical writers for the government or do technical documentation. They're like, yeah, we don't actually get audited on this ever. We just know we have to design it with it in mind. Um, so whenever you have to, start that process, I'm here. Well, I mean that's how I got here.
Well, I mean,
But
like right now, the main thing that I've been focused on is the narrator stuff. But this is the thing that I was sent. So I had narrator working just fine.
okay,
Um, did I spell that right? I don't know if I spelled that right. Dope. Two S's. Okay. And because we are a Windows Store app, we have to also meet Microsoft standards as well.
nice.
And so they sent me this and this, excuse me, that I need to follow. And after reading through it, I'm like, I did narrator completely wrong and
Uh-oh.
accessibility completely wrong. And not just this told me, but I think you told me however long ago that was.
Couple
Was it you
weeks.
that told me? It
Yeah.
was you. So
So
I'm like, yeah, I just
fun
did it
fact,
wrong.
there's not many .NET developers on Twitch. So every once in a while I try to get on and I try to just like, watch somebody to follow their thought process. But I saw one day I got on and I saw .NET and I was like, oh, I'm here because this is what I need help with. This is what I'm working on. And that day is the day you were working on accessibility. And I was like, I've been doing this for,
That was our
I've
first day
been,
together.
yeah. I've been, researching everything I need to and making the changes I need to for the past couple of months. But um, I don't know if I said this, but you know how like for front end stuff, everything's like mobile first. Um,
Yes, yes, I
the
do.
other
Because I
aspect
didn't
of
do that with the app that I worked on.
yeah, neither did we. It's a little rough. The other aspect of that when I started reading about accessibility in this, it's kind of the best practices, the way like people are taught, um, most of the time, if they follow, the structure through MDN or Web3 schools, um, it, it's it kind of accessibility kind of works naturally if it's been structured right. So
Yeah, yeah. So if you use semantic HTML tags, for example, then it'll know your document structure and it'll know how to navigate.
yeah, it's just when you get to a company that's wrote all their stuff years ago and that wasn't put in place, you're like, oh no, this is more work than starting from scratch, in my opinion,
Well, that
to
was
an
the
extent.
thing though with the UI. I was essentially starting from scratch or starting from a design.
Oh, interesting.
So I had the option of how to implement all of the UI, but I'm a middle tier developer. I do functionality and
Oh, okay.
automation and all of the cool stuff that happens behind the scenes at the push of a button. They're like, wow, that just did that.
So are there 3 tiers?
To me, there are. Most people say
Okay.
there's front end and back end, and the stuff that I'm describing is a part of back end. But
Okay.
I say there's a middle tier as well, which is the core logic of the application that does the processing, the functionality, the automation, all the things
Okay.
that are really fun.
So are the other two front end and back end, or do
Mm-hmm.
you label them? Okay.
Front
Um.
end, which is everything to do with user interface and user experience. Back end, everything to do with how does the server store your data to where is the application hosted.
Oh, okay. So you do include that in back end. Yeah, because that's what I'm trying to do, or learn myself. I guess is the entire stack, but all the way down to like setting up the Linux server for it. Um.
I think that people call that a different thing in itself anyway. So, like configuring servers is just system administration, it's not back end work,
There.
which is weird to me because it is back end work to me. And then there's the DB nerds.
Interesting. Yeah, those are the ones that I wanna like databases more. I want to learn about it. It's genuinely interesting. It's just I don't know how much of it I need to know right now.
That
There's only
was
so
my
much
focus
time.
at university.
Data.
Yeah, database design,
Oh,
database
well,
administration, mostly
fascinating.
design.
Okay. I
Is
think
fun too.
I have a buddy who he was getting a master's in like data analytics and sent or we would play StarCraft together during my internship. During the period of my internship. Uh and he knew well, I mean he didn't know anything about Python, and they were doing a lot of Python in R is a fun one. Entirely different as far as like its syntax, in my
I
opinion.
used
But
it at university for physics class, and that's about it.
nice. Uh so like I got to see a lot of like his learning material, trying to just help him with Python, and it was like I was like, oh dude, this is cool. Like I want to learn more about, why this and this about, setting up the database, and he was just like, oh no, we're not getting that deep into it. Um but no, that's cool. That's
Oh
cool
no,
that you can get it. So is that like technically the degree, or was that just like some
it's still
classes?
computer science. It's just that
Oh,
I
okay.
focused on like my senior project was enterprise systems. How did I word it? Anyway, it had to do with enterprise systems. So managing large data for enterprise systems. And mine, of course, was focused on human resources because that's where I was working. And I had already made so many automated tools using VBA. I'm like, now I have Java. Now I have Oracle as my database. I have all the power in the world. I can make whatever I want for automation, for enhancing automation.
hmm
Yeah, all that.
So it was enterprise systems. I'm a little familiar with Oracle. Red Hat didn't use too much of it. I've heard
Probably
about
not
it.
anymore.
Uh, yeah, I think they got off of, I think it was called EBS or something. But like on the enterprise side, so was it specific to just whatever data, you know, a large company has, or was it?
It was definitely specific to the human resources
Oh, okay,
industry.
right. Okay.
Yeah. So
Interesting.
it was a lot of exercising my NI, exercising not just NI, NIT, which was all about let's find the basic concept and pattern that I can do automation with, find out how to benefit the most people by
Okay.
automating those processes. And then the database portion of it was just how do I structure a database that can provide the information I need to do this automation. And that's the fun
Okay.
part to me about database
Interesting.
design.
Yeah. After when I was setting up our ERP at my previous job, um, it was just a mess as far as like where all the data was, and I had to start like learning the gist of it when I had to pull all this data from Excel or from SQL, but then to put it
Excel,
into
your best
QuickBooks.
database.
No, no, I'm not. You know, like I know everything has a specific purpose.
Hmm.
Um, I like having to deal with the NoSQL side of things, the
Yeah,
Mongos of
I
the
have
world.
trouble thinking about NoSQL, thinking in terms of NoSQL,
Interesting.
because everything is
That's
related to everything else to me. And how can you live in a world with unstructured data and no relations? How do you pull data from a system like that? I understand the concepts. It's
right.
just, it still hurts my brain.
No, I get that. That's how virtualization was for me at first. When I started learning about,
Like
like,
you're
you know,
not
I
creating
was
a
at
an emulator. You
when I
are
was at
creating a
like
machine.
Red Hat, you know, Kubernetes is mentioned all the time, and it's like, all right, container orchestrator, and I was like, okay, I don't know where to start here. Then so I broke it down from like bottom to top, or top to bottom. Started at the bottom. Started with containers. I still haven't had to use them for their purpose. Um, for you know what they're good for, which is being able to, what is it, horizontal scaling?
Talking to someone that
Question
doesn't
mark.
really use containers either. But
Oh,
yes, I
okay.
will agree with you. I mean that does sound right. It does help
um,
with scaling. Just say
but
scaling.
but yeah, no, I get the like. I think I understand the concepts.
Scaling out. Yes.
um, but yeah, that's I don't know. Luckily, I don't really have to. I have to like pull from a database, but now I don't have to worry about it. It was just when I originally at my old job when I originally had to you know, find all this information. It's just they kind of some things in SQL like they didn't actually make it relational.
Right. Yeah, and
And
there's a lot of poor database design that is like that. It's just like here's one
and
table, here's another table, and that's all you get.
yeah, and it hurt at first because so for every product they sold they had four different variants. Um, and because well, sorry, I say that like as a technicality, like on the e-commerce website
Mhm.
there's a drop down, there's four different variants. Everything that goes into that product except for one thing was different, but when they originally structured it, those were four
Different
different
records.
product, yeah,
Hmm.
like full records, not
Right.
this record with one of these changes.
Right.
um and it kind of just hurt. I did reduce, you know, the size of the database by a lot of rows, uh, for that, but it was just stuff like that where I got to see like it done poorly for probably the first time I ever had to touch it. So now like anytime I have to deal with, you know, laying data out in mostly in Excel. That was what I was doing in at my internship. Well, they were using Google Sheets, but um whenever I have to lay data out, I'm like, all right, like let's make sure everything is clear, even if it's the raw data file that I have on the back end, or in the hidden page. Like anybody who sees this, like I need them to see as little as possible, but give them the most information possible. And I think that was the one good thing they liked about me, was how I presented data in sheets.
I do like that a lot. That is an amazing skill to have. So definitely cherish it and nourish it.
My last thing for you, and it's going to be quick, is you've mentioned the thinking, the way you try to boil everything down.
Not try to, it happens naturally. But yes.
What was that called, and what was the
introverted intuition?
Okay.
So the reason that it is that like what you might want to look up if you're interested in it at all is if you're an ENTP, there is a way that you read those characters to know what your function stack is, and that's the term that's used.
Okay.
And your function stack is essentially, think of a glass that has, or a glass jar that has different sizes of rocks. So you have big rocks that go in first, and then smaller rocks that fall into the cracks, and then smaller rocks. And then when you pour water in, it goes through all of those layers. And so the first layer it hits for you is extroverted intuition.
Okay.
And then the second layer is introverted thinking, and then the third layer is extroverted feeling, and the fourth layer is introverted sensing, which is your it's called a blind spot.
Okay.
It's your weakest function. And I'm not the most familiar with introverted sensing. It still baffles me, but I don't even have it anywhere in my function stack. But it's just derived by those 4 letters. But this function stack is the thing that helps you understand more about why you think the way you think, how you process information. Okay. It first goes through extroverted intuition without you thinking about it. It just happens. You probably wouldn't be able to do it on purpose. And then it goes to introverted thinking, which is the thing that you do the most, which is standardize, which is find the thing that works for you, fully understand it, do that thing. And then third, your 6-year-old is extroverted feeling, which is where you go when you are in stress, in a 6-year-old tantrum mode. But that has to do with feeling other people's vibe, feeling other people's feelings, and extroverting your feelings. And then SI is something to do with holding on to what always was.
And these function stacks are, like, if I Google ENTP function stacks, that's what?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that you get ENTP function stack. Yep. Cool. And ETI. And then it tells you essentially, because you're ENTP, you just read it from left to right, and then you go down and then left. So like make a square, because EP. So this one is an ENFP. So NE, F, and then change this to an I, and then change this to a T, E, and then change this to an S, I. But then these are backwards. EJs are start at the T, TE, SI, NE, FI. But yeah. So that's how you can read it.
Okay. No, I see it.
Yeah, so you're just flipping. So EPs and IJs are read in the same order. So mine is NITE FISE.
Okay.
And then IPs are opposite order. IPs and EJs TISE NIFE. That's fun. And then it gives an explanation of what each of those functions mean by themselves. But then there's also things called loops. So like an NITI loop is someone that gets stuck in their head a lot with aggressive inaction. It's what is it called? Not performance anxiety. Paralysis. Analysis paralysis.
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah, yeah.
So fun stuff. Again, you read into it a lot, and then it's a better tool for you than just saying, I'm these 4 letters.
Well, I don't want to read into it and then it feel like an intervention.
I mean, like that's primarily what these are supposed to be for. Like Myers-Briggs stuff turned it into let's use this so that we can make money, essentially.
Oh, so this
Supposedly it
is
was because we need to work better as partners and know more about each other when we're working together.
so this is pre. So this is this what came prior to
Is
the
there a TLDR?
Myers-Briggs?
So the
Or
concept of function stacks is a Jungian psychology theory.
okay,
So he doesn't quite use the same letters and everything, but he does describe them, and that's what this is derived off of. So
okay,
Jungian thinking as far as the difference between extroversion and introversion and what that means for you to have a function that is introverted versus extroverted versus you being an introvert
okay.
kind of thing. So you
All right,
could
cool.
be INTP and an extrovert. Yeah, anyway.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah, no, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I just have to make sure I also get this one deliverable in
Yeah,
the next 20 minutes.
no worries, but that
But
will be the end of my stream anyway.
nice. Perfect timing, everyone.
Here's a playlist for the TLDR.
Oh,
But it's like 5 minutes per function, so I don't know.
now
I like this guy. He's cool.
for Twitch chat specific things, like after this ends, do you have like all the links go somewhere or?
I think in the VOD you'll still be able to see the links, but you'd have to navigate to this part of the video. But I can put it in the description of this video specifically.
Well, I have this one saved. I'm just always
okay.
wondering if I ever miss anything. Sometimes, like, I have to walk away from my computer or take a meeting.
Yeah, that's on the YouTubes.
On the YouTubes.
Because the Twitch videos expire after days. But
okay,
I post them to YouTube after 24 hours.
gotcha. Okay, cool. No, I greatly appreciate it. This has been great. Glad I could take up 2 hours of your time.
It was great having you, though.
I will be around, and whenever we hit accessibility, I'm your guy. Let me be your guy.
Awesome. Well, any parting words for everyone else?
I'll ask a lot of questions, but feel free to ask me questions. I'm sure I can help somewhere. No, I know. I appreciate it.
Awesome. All right, then. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
You too. Take care.
Yep. And thank you all once again. That was an amazing community day. I love that conversation. That was a lot of fun. So this video will be available on YouTube's sometime after 24 hours after I end the stream. It's still so hard to come up with good verbiage. This video has to stay YouTube exclusive for 24 hours. That's all. And not YouTube, Twitch exclusive. But other than that, I'm going to head back to work and burn through the remainder of these bugs, get with my project manager about these localizations that need to go out today, and hopefully everything is good to go. With that, and I have a bunch of stuff that I was supposed to TwitchTube exclusives, a bunch of stuff that I was supposed to get sent out later this afternoon that I'm going to do first. I remember all of them because I have them in a notepad, so I don't need to remember them. But feel free, like Mojo was saying, feel free to hop over into Discord if you have any questions or if you want to offer support to any of us that ask questions in our Discord. But yeah, feel free to hop into that. We have a very, very wide range of personalities in there, which I love. Many, many different people. And many, many thanks to Dukasoft especially today, because he's always best bot, best non-bot bot, not bot, bot. So awesome. Arigato gozaimasu. And special thanks to Mojo for hopping into the voice channel with us. So I wish you all a fantastic weekend as well. I will be seeing you around. That's going to be a ciao for now. Bye, Scott. Waving. Music turns up. I bet you the music is ending soon. Are you ending yourself? We're going to wait for the next song to start. I'll just keep waving. Disco was here too. Abaddis was here. I did say hello to Abaddis, but I forgot to say hello to Scott. Sorry about that. Okay,